Good morning. Good morning. Bonjour tout le monde. Merci d'être venu. And I'll just say thank you to all of colleagues from Canada who have come to South Africa for the G20. I also want to begin by thanking President Ramaphosa for his leadership in hosting the first G20 Leaders Summit in Africa, as well as his generous hospitality and that of his team. Now, when President Ramaphosa attended the G7 in Kananaskis back in June, we discussed our shared priorities for Canada's G7 presidency and South Africa's G20. And even though Canada and South Africa are separated by long physical distances, we're bound by deep historical ties, by enduring friendship, and a promising future together. I just want to recall our Prime Minister, Brian Mulroney, standing in solidarity with South Africans in their struggle for freedom, leading by imposing sanctions and advocating for an end to apartheid. When South Africa emerged as a democracy, Canada was amongst the first nations to engage as their partner. Canadian judges and lawyers shared lessons from our own experience with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms as South Africans wrote theirs. And that legacy of cooperation continues today. Our firefighters, on both sides, are deployed across oceans when wildfires rage, as they do all too frequently. Our scientists collaborate in agriculture, artificial intelligence, and clean technology. Our entrepreneurs are building partnerships that stretch from Cape Town to Calgary. And it's that spirit of cooperation that has underpinned our work at this summit. 2 decades ago, in the aftermath of the Asian financial crisis, Canada's then Finance Minister, Paul Martin, helped to design the G20. His argument at the time was that the world's most significant economies, both advanced and emerging, should meet regularly to strengthen financial stability and global governance. G20's mission was to bring together the global North and South, to ensure that fast-growing economies such as China, India, Brazil, and South Africa had their seat at the table, and to make an increasingly interconnected global economy work for everyone. Well, that mission endures. The assumptions beneath it have been transformed. This G20 meeting takes place in a very different world. For generations, middle powers like Canada have benefited from a rules-based multilateral trading system and an open global financial order. Our geography gave us privileged access to the world's largest economy and distanced us from many of the world's threats. Et maintenant, la stratégie économique des États-Unis est passée de multilatéralisme à une approche bilatérale et plus dirigée. Et les institutions multilatérales sur lesquelles des puissances moyennes comme le Canada se sont longtemps appuyées, de l'OMC à l'ONU, plient sous les poids de cette nouvelle ère. Nous ne vivons pas une transition, mais une rupture. Et dans chaque rupture réside la responsabilité de bâtir un nouveau départ. Nous savons que la nostalgie n'est pas une stratégie. Nous ne pouvons pas reconstruire le monde d'hier, nous bâtissons quelque chose de meilleur. This year's G20 summit brought together nations representing 3/4 of the world's population, 2/3 of global GDP, and 3/4 of the world's trade. And that's without the United States formally attending. It's a reminder that the center of gravity in the global economy is shifting. The last century was defined by concentration of capital, production, and power. The next one will be defined by diffusion of technology, of energy, and influence, by the rise of the Global South and new roles for middle powers like Canada, to multilateral arrangements that work for all. Our task is to ensure that Canada doesn't only endure this shift, but that we prosper under it. And that demands a new economic strategy. It's why Canada is signing new deals with new partners, diversifying our trade, and attracting billions of dollars of new investment into our country. Under South Africa's presidency, this G20 is focused on solidarity, equality, and sustainability, priorities that Canada strongly supports. And these values define how Canada is building now. We're building inclusively in full partnership with First Nations, the Inuit, and the Métis. We are building in solidarity with workers, creating good union jobs. We're building sustainably, because reducing emissions is not just a moral duty, it's an economic imperative. And we're aligning our approach to our strengths in clean energy, critical minerals, and infrastructure. Lundi, juste avant notre départ pour cette visite aux Émirats arabes unis, notre premier budget fédéral a été adopté. Au cours de ce budget se trouve un plan ambitieux visant à libérer 1 000 milliards de dollars de nouveaux investissements au cours des 5 prochaines années. Et une partie de ce plan consiste à doubler nos exportations vers des marchés autres que les États-Unis, ce qui pourrait générer 300 milliards de dollars en nouveaux échanges au cours de la prochaine décennie. Pour alimenter cette ambition, nous diversifions notre commerce et concluons de nouveaux accords avec de nouveaux partenaires et investisseurs. Nous bâtissons grand et nous bâtissons pour que tout le monde en profite. At a time when too many countries are retreating into geopolitical blocs or the battlegrounds of protectionism, Canada believes that the G20 must remain a bridge. At this year's summit, we've deepened our partnerships. Well, in South Africa, we've announced the opening of FinDev Canada's new office in Cape Town. This office will finance sustainable development projects and connect Canadian firms to new opportunities across Africa. Canada and South Africa have also just agreed to launch discussions on a new foreign investment protection agreement, which will catalyze even greater private sector engagement in the infrastructure, clean energy, and minerals space in this country. We have advanced work on a critical minerals production alliance building on the G7 standard-based markets roadmap, and we've secured South Africa's agreement to continue those discussions toward greater cooperation on the sourcing, responsible sourcing of those minerals and investor protections. In the last 3 days, I've also held several bilateral meetings. Canada's re-engaging pragmatically with global giants India and China. Yesterday, Canada, India, and Australia formed a new trilateral partnership on technology and innovation, which will accelerate our cooperation on critical and emerging technologies. A partnership that will draw on our strengths and focus on clean energy, critical minerals, and artificial intelligence to unlock more opportunities for Canadian workers and businesses. Prime Minister Modi and I are meeting later today to discuss our broader trade relationship. Yesterday, Canada met the EU and Vietnam in its capacity as the incoming chair of the CPTPP trade agreement, and we began discussions on greater integration between the CPTPP and the EU. Linking those two of the world's largest trading blocs, representing over 1 billion people, will expand trade, catalyze investment, and increase partnerships across a range of areas from AI to energy in the Indo-Pacific, Europe, and of course, very much in Canada. Our senior officials will convene over the following months with a mission to deliver concrete results in this new bloc early next year. In addition, Canada is maintaining our leadership in global health and science. On Friday, we pledged $1 billion to the Global Fund, which will protect millions of people from the world's deadliest infectious diseases. The Global Fund has already helped over 25 million people access HIV medicines, treated 7 million people for tuberculosis, and protected more than 160 million people from malaria. Our new government is working for Canada to move from reliance to resilience by building a broad and dense web of new partnerships and creating new economic opportunities that will make Canada stronger both at home and abroad. As we deepen our trade relationships with reliable partners, we are building massive trade and transportation infrastructure at home in Canada. Nous bâtissons de grands projets nationaux qui transformeront l'avenir du pays. De nouveaux ports, des mines, des corridors énergétiques, des projets de mise en valeur des minéraux critiques et des initiatives d'énergie propre qui connecteront davantage notre économie, diversifieront nos industries et nous permettront d'exporter vers de nouveaux marchés partout dans le monde. En tant que l'un des rares pays au monde à posséder une technologie nucléaire propre, le réacteur CANDU, nous accélérons le déploiement nucléaire des SMR commerciaux aux réacteurs de grande capacité. En septembre, nous avons annoncé une première série de grands projets qui seront examinés de manière accélérée par notre nouveau bureau de grands projets. Et la semaine dernière, nous avons annoncé une deuxième série. Au total, ces projets représentent plus de 115 milliards de dollars en nouveaux investissements. To turbocharge construction, development, and the creation of high-paying careers, we're signing new deals and finding new investors to fuel our plans and Canada's economic ambition. Earlier this week, I was in the United Arab Emirates, where I met with the leading sovereign wealth funds and CEOs to attract new investment into Canada. We signed an investment protection agreement, and we launched negotiations on a new comprehensive economic partnership. At the conclusion of my visit, I welcomed the decision of the UAE to invest $70 billion in Canada. This powerful vote of confidence in our economy represents one of the largest foreign direct investments in Canada's history and will create high-paying careers across our country, from energy to agriculture and artificial intelligence. Overall, we've announced almost a dozen new economic and security partnerships across 4 continents in less than 6 months. On Monday, we signed a new partnership with Sweden to increase collaboration on trade, investment, and innovation. We've signed agreements with the European Union in trade and defense, with Germany in critical minerals, with Chile in technology. We finalized a new trade agreement and economic partnership with Indonesia. We launched negotiations, free trade negotiations with Thailand and the Philippines as we accelerated our work to finalize our free trade agreement with the ASEAN nations over the next year. That's 20% of global GDP. Lorsque les historiens se pencheront sur la décennie à venir, ils y verront un moment charnière, celui où l'ordre d'après-guerre froide a cédé la place à un ordre plus contesté, mais aussi plus avantageux pour le Canada, si nous choisissons d'en saisir l'occasion. Ils reconnaîtront que le Canada, nation forgée par des bâtisseurs, des voyageurs, des preneurs de risques, a choisi de bâtir de nouveau, de prendre des risques à nouveau et de tracer de nouvelles voies. At the start of my remarks, I recalled that the ties between Canada and South Africa are deep. For many Canadians, these bonds were exemplified by Nelson Mandela's 2 addresses to our Parliament. The first was in 1990, just months after his release from prison. The second came in 1998. When he was a president, he thanked Canadians for their efforts for justice in South Africa. And amongst President Mandela's many powerful words, one reflection echoes with resonance today. He said, "We know that our destiny lies in our own hands, yet we also know that we cannot bring about our renaissance solely by our own efforts, since the problems we face are rooted in conditions beyond the power of any one nation to determine." His words spoke to a moment of rebirth in South Africa. And today they can guide how we lead the way forward from this moment of rupture. The world's changing. The global economy is being rewired. Canada isn't retreating. In the face of change, Canada's new government is making generational investments at home and building deeper partnerships abroad. Dans cette nouvelle ère, le leadership du Canada sera défini non seulement par la force de nos valeurs, mais aussi par la valeur de notre force. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We're now going to begin the questions. Première question, Jeffrey, go ahead.
Prime Minister, do you support Cyril Ramaphosa's decision yesterday to release the official final declaration of this summit in the opening session,
Yes.
despite objections from Argentina and the United States, and despite the fact that the U.S. was calling for only a chair statement at the end?
Well, I was in the opening session, and yes, I very much supported it. And let me give the context. The G20, these meetings, the actual meetings, are very important. The discussions in the room, as much as the bilateral series of bilateral meetings, some of which I just described. But it's also a very broad process that takes an entire year, with a series of ministerials, environment ministers, trade ministers, natural resource ministers, ministers on artificial intelligence, and beyond. And those processes lead to a series of conclusions. There's also outreach from labor, from business and beyond that also feeds into those conclusions. And then led by our Sherpa, Cindy is here, I hope, who's done an outstanding job, also our G7 Sherpa, a series of negotiations which come up with this consensus document. That document's there. We support it. The others around the table supported it. No one objected when it was put to the table. Obviously, the United States is not here, so the United States isn't party to that consensus. But that is a consensus, and I'll finish here, which represents governments representing 3/4 of the world's population, 2/3 of the world's GDP. That consensus, that statement has weight.
Follow-up?
Just as a follow-up, do you think the U.S., Donald Trump's decision to completely boycott this summit is doing any damage to multilateralism as a concept?
Look, I think that the decision of when you include guests that were invited by the chair, a series of countries, including, for example, Jamaica in our hemisphere, Finland for other reasons, countries that were invited beyond the core members of the G20 as well as international organizations. We have 60, I believe, we can double check the number, 62 leaders around that table. And that's multilateralism. And the job, I look at it more from who shows up, who engages, who does the work, and who builds. And Canada shows up and Canada engages. And I think collectively we've made a lot of progress. Now, I'm not going to oversell it because there are big challenges to multilateralism. We all know that. And the nature of that is in flux. And in fact, that will be the topic of the formal session this morning, is where does the G20 go from here?
Next
Thank
question, Dylan.
Dylan Robertson of the Canadian Press. I'd like to ask about our Africa strategy. Our envoy for the continent said that he struggles with not just the lack of funding for the strategy, but getting people to actually say the word Africa within global affairs. We've had the cut to Global Fund, to foreign aid. We had a budget that articulated Asia and Europe as our priority markets, despite the young population of this continent. You've just announced the FIPA for South Africa. We haven't really heard about other priority markets on the continent. You're not visiting any other country on this continent. I'm just wondering, what do you say to people who feel that we're deprioritizing the economic opportunities here in Africa?
I'd say a couple of things. One, we've been in government for a little more than 6 months. We have set some priorities in terms of deepening the partnerships that we immediately have. For example, the deep partnerships with Europe, with the UK, with Mexico. So taking those partnerships and moving them, working to move them to the next level. So when you look at where's the most immediate return for Canadians, you start there. In our judgment, that's what we've been doing. And look, there's more work to do, but we have roadmaps in all those cases, and we're working that Then secondly, the opportunities, yes, the opportunities in Asia, where we have an Asia-Pacific strategy, as you know, but really putting that to work and being engaged, which is what we've been doing. We're starting to see some immediate results, finishing the work on Indonesia, launching 2 major free trade agreements that I just referenced, and finishing work that's been going on a long time on ASEAN, but also re-engaging with China and India. Then, as a broader set of things, which I won't detail, yes, Africa is part. Is it the first thing we worked on in terms of priorities? No. I mean, that is revealed because we have a responsibility to have that highest return. Canada remains engaged with Africa. We are. Let me make a point on aid. The Global Fund. The normal contribution of Canada in international vehicles, if I can put it that way, is around our GDP. It's about 2 to 3% is the normal contribution. We're well over 6% in the Global Fund. Our share of the Global Fund went up. So yes, we've had to take pragmatic, responsible decisions across the board in government, which also included returning our aid budget to the level pre-COVID. Within that, though, we're focused on where it has a maximum impact, very much including on this continent, where the social justice element there. I'll make one final point just to give you the overall context. Yes, deepening the partnership with South Africa, as I referenced, but as well, I had a conversation yesterday with the chair of the African Union, the president of Angola, because the African Free Trade Agreement has just been put in place, and there is a possibility that we could work something there. That's not an announcement. I don't want to overplay it, but that's an example of moving on the Africa strategy. En français, quel aspect? C'est la priorité. Oui, c'est encore une priorité. C'est une des grands continents. C'est plus d'1 milliard de personnes mais au début de stratégie économique, stratégie commerciale pour le Canada, nous avons commencé avec nos grands partenariats en Europe, au Mexique, par exemple, et dans les grandes économies en Asie. Ça, c'est l'effet, c'est évident. Mais oui, mais nous allons continuer à engager en Afrique.
Thank you for the detail. And I'd like to also ask about the feminist foreign policy.
Yeah.
Our Sherpa had written that we are going to try to advance gender equality through economic growth. That seems to be a bit of a reframing from the past government, which had more of a focus on sexual health, women and security, gender-based violence. You probably saw South Africa pushing forward GBV, given the protests that we've had here. So I wanted to ask, do we still have a feminist foreign policy, and where do those values fit as we try to expand these economic ties with countries whose governments don't always prioritize the rights of women and LGBT people?
So you packed a lot into your follow-up. We have, for example, the work on gender-based violence, the work on female equality was one of the priorities of the South African presidency. I recognize the challenges that exist in this country, and still the more work that we need to do in Canada with respect to gender-based violence. In fact, some of our legislation, actual and prospective, is addressing those issues, which are real challenges. So yes, and this is an example very much of the value of the G20, which is to raise issues that affect all of our economies, all of our countries. It's not an economic issue first and foremost. It is an issue of justice. It affects Canada. It affects everyone around that table. Different countries put a different priority on it. But by discussing strategies and approaches, my experience is that, I think that's part of our policy as well, our experience is that helps make broader progress. So yes, we have that aspect to our foreign policy, but I wouldn't describe our foreign policy as feminist foreign policy. Those are different points, but related.
Next question,
That makes sense.
Ashley?
Yeah.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Ashley Burke, CBC News. Since the U.S. called off trade talks with Canada, has Mr. Trump returned your calls, texts, or accepted your apology over the Ontario ad?
He accepted the apology when I spoke to him, and we've had discussions. I've been busy. There's another point, though. I've been busy. We passed a budget with that's going to catalyze $1 trillion of investment. We have launched new trade agreements. We've secured new investment in the country of a size not seen arguably before. So we're busy. He's got other things to do, and we'll re-engage when it's appropriate.
When was the
En français, nous sommes très occupés. Ça, c'est la vérité. Nous sommes très occupés. Il y a un budget. Il y a beaucoup à faire au Canada. OK? Et en somme, avec les investissements au Canada et les nouveaux partenariats, nous pouvons nous donner beaucoup plus que les Américains peuvent enlever de notre pays. Et ça, j'ai dit ça plusieurs fois. Madame, vous avez entendu cette phrase ou une variante de cette phrase plusieurs fois. Mais ça, c'est maintenant, c'est la stratégie étant. Nous mettons en œuvre cette stratégie maintenant. Alors, nous sommes occupés. C'est pas toutes les choses. C'est pas les États-Unis tout le temps. OK? Maintenant, ici encore, il y a 75% de la population du monde. 2/3 du PIB du monde. Ici, ça c'est le jeu maintenant. Ça, c'est le jeu d'avenir.
When was the last time you spoke to the president? And as you diversify trade away from the U.S., what's your red line? Like when you, in terms of dealing with other countries, I mean, what are the conditions where you won't do business with another country no matter how much money it has?
Well, I think let me answer the second part of that, which is there's levels of engagement with countries. Our partnership with the European Union, for example, is at a level prospectively that is unmatched with other jurisdictions. Because we have similar values in terms of privacy, for example. We have similar values in terms of sustainability. We have similar values in terms of workers' rights. We have similar values, to go to the previous question, in terms of gender equality, LGBTQ rights. And all of that reflects, so the level of economic cooperation, defense cooperation, security cooperation. We have similar views about territorial integrity in Ukraine as well. So our level of cooperation with the European Union, with the United Kingdom, is on a different level than our level of cooperation with other countries. So there's that aspect. Other countries in the emerging world where there's levels of cooperation which are more in commodity-based trade, goods and everyday goods and services, but don't extend to those broader partnerships. So all relationships are not equal, they're not of equal depth, and certainly it's not the case. This is an important point. When we engage with a country, Canada engages with a country, that we're endorsing everything that country does. The two do not follow. We calibrate our relationship, but it's not an endorsement of everything that happens in the country, nor vice versa from those countries to us.
Next question.
Who cares? I mean, it's a detail. It's a detail. I spoke to him. I'll speak to him again when it matters. I mean, the sort of, comme j'ai dit, nous sommes très occupés. Nous sommes très occupés avec l'avenir du Canada. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous et avec les nouveaux partenariats. Et il y aura des conversations, oui, avec le président et moi, probablement dans les prochaines 2 semaines. Mais on attend I'm always happy to, sorry, I slipped into French because I anticipated the en français thing. I look forward to speaking to the President soon, but I don't have a burning issue to speak with the President about right now. when America wants to come back and have the discussions on the trade side, we will have those discussions. I'm going to answer a potential question here, and then I'll pass back, which is, for example, with respect to Ukraine and the 28-point plan. We are a core member of the Coalition of the Willing. You would have seen a demonstration of that yesterday with the meeting of European leaders, a core group of European leaders, the Prime Minister of Japan, ourselves, which formed a common position. And that common position is communicated. Our national security advisors are meeting today in Geneva, including Canada's, and the common position communicated to do the additional work that's required on the peace plan there. Each of us do not need to call President Trump and communicate that position. We need to forge that position. That position's been communicated. The follow-up is being done by our national security advisors. I will be speaking with President Zelensky later today just to close the loop on some aspects of that. Okay?
Next question.
Rachel Aiello, CTV News. Good morning.
Morning.
You're pursuing deals with countries that your predecessor arguably took a different approach to. I'm just wondering, how are you balancing pragmatism and principles as you pursue this economic diversification? And specifically, are there countries you won't do business with?
Well, there are countries that we're not doing business with, that we're not talking to. So yes, I'm not going to give you a long list of those, but you can gradually. We're active. You'll see in terms of who's not on our list, because the one thing that is effectively true, and it's being revealed, is that countries want to deal with Canada. They want deeper relationships with Canada. There is an enormous opportunity. Part of that, at its core, I think we have to recognize, is the value of Canada, many values of Canada. It's also a recognition of how much the world has changed and the need for these new web of relationships. And in terms of balancing, as you say, as you framed it, I'd refer to my previous answer, which is it is the level of engagement that we have.
Does your government view India as a reliable trading partner?
In terms of trade, yes, we do actually. Yeah, we do. There are issues. Let me frame that, expand just a slight bit, if I may, on that, which is that we have trade issues with the European Union. I described earlier as our closest partner. They have trade issues with us from time to time. Sometimes there will be our dispute settlement mechanisms, or the WTO's dispute settlement mechanism will have to adjudicate on decisions that we have each taken. That's part of the system. So you can be both a reliable trading partner, and there will be some sources of friction. What I will say with respect to India is that we don't have a comprehensive economic partnership agreement with India, one of the world's largest and fastest growing economies. The ability to have more effective trade with them, to scale that trade with them, would be greatly helped by that, and that's one of the many reasons why I'm looking forward to the discussion with Prime Minister Modi this afternoon.
Question, question.
Madame.
Oui. Bonjour, Monsieur Carney, Laurence Martin, Radio-Canada. Justement, sur votre rencontre avec Monsieur Modi, le Canada accuse l'Inde d'être impliquée dans le meurtre d'un Canadien en sol canadien.
Ouais.
Jusqu'à quel point est-ce que ce meurtre doit dicter notre relation avec l'Inde?
Ce qui est important, et c'est important d'avoir la coopération en ce qui concerne le mettre en œuvre des lois, de coopération des autorités, des polices, des autorités sécuritaires entre les deux pays. Et le Premier ministre Modi et moi, nous avons eu cette discussion à Kananaskis en juin. Madame Anand, notre ministre des Affaires étrangères, a continué ces discussions avec son homologue indien, et je suis sûr que nous aurions, le Premier ministre Modi et moi, une autre discussion sur ce sujet cet après-midi.
Question suivie.
Mais
Oui, il y a un processus légal dans le cas spécifique, tu le sais, et ce n'est pas approprié, évidemment, pour moi, comme Premier ministre, de faire un commentaire sur
Mais en fait, ce que
sur
j'essaie
cela.
ce que j'essaie de comprendre, c'est que vous voulez développer la relation commerciale avec l'Inde, mais est-ce qu'il y a une ligne rouge dans votre tête? À partir de quand vous vous dites on ne peut pas faire affaire avec ce pays parce que ils sont potentiellement impliqués dans des meurtres au Canada, il y a des menaces. Est-ce qu'il y a une ligne rouge dans votre tête avec l'Inde?
Il y a la nécessité d'avoir la coopération entre nos autorités. Ça, c'est absolument clair. J'ai fait le point au début le recommencement, si je peux dire comme ça, le recommencement de nos relations. Et cette coopération se déroule maintenant.
D'accord.
OK.
Mais vous pouvez continuer la relation économique, c'est ça que
Oui,
vous
oui.
dites?
Prochaine question. Next
Oui,
question.
oui. Madame.
Good morning, Karina Roman, CBC News. CISA says the threat from India remains and that Canada should remain vigilant because of that. Are you moving too fast on rekindling relations with India? What will you be saying to Modi this afternoon? And when do you plan to go to India?
Okay. With respect to any forms of foreign interference, we have to remain vigilant. We are vigilant. I got my security clearance well in advance of becoming Prime Minister, and that's sort of table stakes for vigilance. And I'm well aware of, as a consequence of the threat landscape, the views of CSIS, the protections we've taken, and there's engagement with a variety of nations on protecting Canadians, and we will continue to do that. Secondly, I've just referred to my exchange a moment ago, which is what's essential is at its base is the cooperation amongst law enforcement, national security advisors, establishing that clear relations, clear messages delivered. That has been reestablished with India. To be absolutely clear, I referenced the foreign minister's meetings, engagement with her counterpart, but it goes to our national security advisors, our law enforcement agents, and others, and so that's there. And in terms of the commercial relationship with India, Canada has quite an actual strong commercial relationship with India. We are one of the largest, for example, foreign investors in India. Canada is. And there have been tight ties. What we're looking to do is to put that on a sound footing through a potential trade agreement between the two countries, which give protections to our businesses, protections to Indian businesses, clear set of rules, dispute mechanisms, and others, and build on those opportunities. So we're looking to build. I'll reference as well, and then hand back for your three-part follow-up. We're looking to build, for example, as with the trilateral technology cooperation partnership that we announced yesterday with Australia and India. And just to put that in context, India is one of the leading developers of clean technology, particularly in solar and wind. And if we're going to diversify our supply chains, this is all, it's all connected. If we're going to diversify in that respect from China, which is the dominant player there, India, South Korea are two of really the two main opportunities. So that cooperation is quite valuable.
You didn't mention the answer to the visit part. When would
Well,
you visit India?
we'll see. I don't know I don't have my whole schedule laid out.
Okay. On Ukraine, in terms of the proposed U.S. peace plan, what issues do you see with that plan as it stands? And you said, not just you, but the coalition yesterday, that there are some elements that could serve as a basis for peace. What are those elements?
Well, we like point number one. Ukraine is a sovereign nation. Okay, that was a good start. There are a host of other issues which are going to be fed back directly and literally are being fed back today in conversations amongst the national security advisors. A summary or a comprehensive one-stop shop feedback to U.S. authorities and the President on behalf of the Coalition of the Willing. There'll be follow-up meetings, including a meeting of, I'm sure, a virtual meeting of the Coalition of the Willing early next week, and discussion. So the specific feedback is being given in, and it is the feedback of European partners. You saw yesterday, it's Canada's feedback, it's Japan's feedback, and it's the feedback of the broader Coalition of the Willing, who actually are there on the ground supporting Ukraine, or supporting Ukraine financially, supporting Ukraine with materiel, and have taken steps to put in place security guarantees when a peace agreement comes into place. Nous aimons la première pointe que l'Ukraine est un pays souverain, mais il y a d'autres aspects qui ne sont pas acceptables. Par exemple, il y a des décisions de l'OTAN. C'est la décision de l'OTAN, ce n'est pas la décision d'une conversation entre la Russie et les États-Unis de décider des choses pour l'OTAN ni l'Union européenne, par exemple. Mais il y a plusieurs aspects qui ont besoin de plus de travail. Mais ce travail est en train par les conseillers de sécurité nationale et nous avons une position commune de la coalition de la volonté, y compris le Canada.
Merci. Last question.
I more or less said the same thing.
Last question, David.
David Aiken, Global News. Good morning.
Morning.
Back to some domestic issues.
Great.
Oil pipeline to BC has been in the news all week at home.
Okay.
Can I get you to confirm that it is Canada's intention to create the conditions to construct an oil pipeline from northern Alberta to northern BC? And can you update us on the status of the discussions around an MOU with Alberta? But I really want to hear you about, are you trying to create the conditions to create that pipeline to northern BC?
We're big picture, what we're looking to do and what we are doing is a series of major investments, nation-building projects that make our country stronger, more independent from the United States, and that these projects are done in a way that benefit and have the full support of Indigenous peoples and are consistent with our climate goals. So the discussion around oil pipelines, for example, and this is the language of Premier Smith of a grand bargain, is absolutely related to other aspects of policy in Alberta, if it were an oil pipeline from Alberta, as well as investment in carbon capture and storage so that these are effectively decarbonized, would be decarbonized barrels. Those discussions are ongoing. They have been constructive. There is a prospect of an agreement. It's not yet finalized. And my experience in these things is when things aren't final, it's better not to overly speculate on where they're going from there. Ce n'était pas c'est une question différente parce que j'ai dit non, on travaille pour les Canadiens et les Canadiens. Nous travaillons pour les Canadiens et les Canadiens afin d'avoir un pays plus souverain, plus indépendant, plus fort. Ça, c'est l'objectif. Ça, c'est l'objectif. Et il faut avoir des projets à l'intérêt national qui sont dans l'intérêt des peuples autochtones et qui sont consistants avec nos objectifs climatiques.
The last question I wanted to ask was, you just mentioned that the budget just passed, just by a hair, and in order to catalyze that trillion...
I'm not sure, like, it passed.
Yeah, it passed.
It passed.
In order to catalyze that $1 trillion of investment, it seems pretty apparent you're going to need at least another year, maybe two, as a government. And I wondered if you're thinking a little strategically about working with opposition parties in a different way in order to make good on what you promised in the budget.
Well, the first thing, David, is to make good, and the first and fundamental thing is to make good on what we promised to Canadians. We ran on building one Canadian economy. We ran on nation-building projects. We ran on building an economy, on giving ourselves more than the Americans could take away by building these projects, but also unleashing investment and building new relationships abroad. That's exactly what we're doing. And so, yes, we engage with, we had opposition support for the Building Canada Act in June. We had some opposition support and constructive opposition actions from all parties except the Bloc québécois. OK? Sauf le Bloc. Seulement le Bloc. OK? Et je reviens à ce point. But we had constructive, the budget passed. And we will continue as a government. We're open to good ideas on how to build the country, on how to, and how to make sure that as we build the country, that it benefits our workers. It's consistent with the needs of Indigenous peoples and the desires of Indigenous people, consistent with our climate goals. So we will continue to do that. And yes, we'll work with opposition parties in order to do that. But in the end, we went before Canadian people with the strategy that our judgment the country needs. We received more votes than any party in the past. Our highest vote share as a party in 50 years, representation in all provinces and the North, and we're going to continue to execute that strategy. Je laisse le bloc pour aujourd'hui parce que c'est une réunion de coopération. Oui, c'est une autre question pour nos jours, mais c'est le plus grand investissement au Québec, le plus grand investissement dans la langue française, dans la culture québécoise, la culture française, dans l'histoire, des investissements dans les régions de Québec et pas de soutien de tout le Bloc québécois. C'est intéressant, c'est intéressant pour moi. Alors, merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Prime Minister. This concludes our press conference. C'est ce qui met fin à notre conférence de presse.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.